Hi, Abhinay.
Hi.
Okay, great. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I would like to welcome everyone for our first of 3 sessions that are being organized by the Diversity and Equality Subcommittee of the Women Lawyers Association. My name is Ruwini Delgoda. I'm the co-chair of the Diversity and Equality Subcommittee, and my co-chair is Abhinay Yogarajan. We respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and waters of New South Wales and all Aboriginal elders, past and present and emerging. I would like to just say very briefly, our committee champions rights of LGBTIQA groups, Aboriginal people, and people with disabilities, and people who are from a culturally and linguistically diverse groups. So the purpose of this seminar is really to create awareness of these groups. And as a first step, I would like to introduce our first, our speaker, Miss Katherine Maver. Katherine is an activist within the LGBTIQA space, and she's the past president of the Women's Business Sydney Gay and Lesbian Business Association. She's a senior managing consultant at IBM, and she was also the first openly trans woman president to be appointed on the board of the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Business Association. She has also founded a private mentoring company in relation to public speaking, as well as an IT company. And I believe one of probably the most challenging task she has at hand is Katherine is raising a puppy, which is a multi Shih Tzu Terrier. Please welcome her to speak to us on this topic.
Hi, Ruwani, and hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to join and speak to you in this wonderful committee. I'd like to also acknowledge the traditional owners on land which we meet. I meet on Gadigal land, and I acknowledge their ancestors as well as those future leaders as well. For those, as Ruwani has said, my name is Katherine Maver. I'm a proud trans woman. I transitioned in 1992. The world was very different then for trans people. And so I'm here today is to tell my story and tell my journey. Also show, basically, allow you, also give you a safe space. I'm going to give you a space. I want this to be interactive as much as possible. I want you to be able to ask me any question you want. I'm sure you have some questions. Some of you may. Be free, by all means, ask me anything. I've heard them all before, so I'm not going to be offended. I can tell you that now. I have done these sessions quite a few times for various groups, and nothing has offended me yet. So I could throw that out as a challenge, but you know, let's be very clear about it. Type thing. I am okay with any question to be asked. I'm also not from, whilst I live in the city now, I was born in a small country town west of Wagga. I had very conservative parents. They were farmers. They weren't that very educated. I say that nicely to my parents because they only just barely went and finished high school. So when I came along type thing, it was very, very challenging for them. I do remember my first ever conversation I had with my parents was when I was about 4, and it was one of the neighbours asking me, what do I want to be when I grow up? And like any 4-year-old, I went and said, well, I wanted to be what I was on TV. And at that stage, it was the flying nun. And then I was quickly told that little boys don't become nuns, they can become priests, but that sort of thing. And I was very shocked because for me, and I guess with most 4-year-olds, they don't understand the concept of gender. They just want to be what they want to be. So that kind of confused me and kind of parked in the back of my head and all that sort of stuff. And because I was born in the 70s, it was quite challenging and all that sort of stuff. And Australia wasn't very accepting of LGBTI and all that sort of stuff, so which is fine. It wasn't until I was in my teens and my parents went away for a dinner party with one of the neighbours, and I was at home alone, and I actually watched a documentary on the ABC about a trans person, and that was probably my first interaction with feeling and actually acknowledging that someone felt the same way as I did, because I was always felt like I was an outsider, which was fine. And so I kind of knew what I was having to do, but that was before the internet, so I didn't know how to do it. And being in a small country town, I knew I had to get out of town. And when I was growing up, the only way to do it out of town was to actually get an education and move to the big city, because only kids with education moved to the city. So I knuckled down, I studied hard and all that sort of stuff. And then I went away to university. And at the age of 19, while at university, I decided to take a gap year. And that's when I actually decided to drop out of uni for a gap year. And I decided to transition. I didn't tell my parents, didn't tell any of my family. I was away. I just did it. I sat for the federal public service exam. I sat it as a boy. And when they rang me up to say I had a job, I basically went and announced to them that I was turning up as a girl. And that was a bit of a shock to them, which was fine. And that was fine. But I kind of knew I was in a safe space by that stage, because by that stage, we knew that there was a level of discrimination laws that had actually been passed. And so I felt safe that they couldn't actually say no to me. They couldn't say no because of my journey type thing. I have recently found out that I was probably about the 10th transgender person that ever joined the Australian Federal Public Service. There's not many, wasn't many runners around back then, which was fine. And that was a challenging, because that obviously meant office space had to be adapted. I had bathrooms. I know the big thing about bathrooms type thing, as a transgender person, I just want to pee in private. I don't care about the label. I just want to go to the bathroom. And so again, it became, because the world was very different back then. I have no, I guess, animosity of how I was treated. I was treated differently. I definitely know that. I know a memo was sent out to the office before I started to announce that there was, and the term back then was transvestite, a transvestite was turning up into the office. And if anyone had any problems, they actually, they were to be reported to management and all that sort of stuff, which was fun. That basically meant I was outed before I even started work. As I said, I have no issues about that, because that's what happened at that time. I can't judge what people happen now to back in the past, because I'm okay with that type thing. And subsequently, I was in the public service for around about 7 years. I then got bored in the public service. I was working, because I had studied IT, I decided to, go contracting for IT. Found I could make twice the amount of money in the IT space than I could be a public service, and everyone likes to chase money. And that's where I went and did contracting. I started my own consulting company, and I had around about 5 people working for me. And it was around the time of Y2K, which was awesome. The money was great. Made quite a lot of money through Y2K and the implementation of GST. I know there's probably some people on here who can't remember that time. We're for GST, but that was a big thing for IT. which was great. And then I got back into, working for other people. I worked for Fujitsu, I worked for Aon, and then subsequently I got headhunted to go to IBM over 12 years ago, and that's where I've been since. I'm also very acutely aware that when I joined the public service and when I joined, private enterprise, I was probably the first transgender person many organizations had, and that was a challenge, and I'm aware of that. I'm aware that terminology has changed from when I actually transitioned. I understand policies have changed since I was actually transitioning, for the good, by the way. I'm not saying it's a negative and all that sort of stuff. It's been very, very good. But I'm also conscious that, it's a conversation, because when I actually do something, I'm conscious that normally I'm one of the first transgender person who they're actually interacting with, that they haven't seen on TV at Mardi Gras, or they haven't seen on the press, that is basically, the sex worker or something like that. I am quite, lucky in regards to how I present, and I'm quite lucky to actually be in the corporate world for that. So the world is very, very different, and I say that time and time again, because the world was different. And some of the differences were, before, and I will need to get a slide because I always talk about history, before 2013, before August the 1st, 2013, the discrimination laws for transgender people wasn't actually in workplace, wasn't really actually there type thing. It was kind of there under the gay and lesbian type thing, but it wasn't really there. So technically up until 2013, could have technically been sacked because I was a transgender person. And the recourse would have been I'd have to go fight in courts, and therefore there would have to be an actual, monetized thing and all that sort of stuff. So, which has been quite, I didn't know about that until afterwards. I mean, I was as I said, I've been quite lucky. But I'm also very much aware that, I don't want to be the transgender, employee. I want to be the employee who happens to be transgender. And that's how I've actually kind of approached my life and everything about that. So, which has been good. I mean, it's been fun, let's be very clear. And one of the reasons why, I am out and I do talk to people, and I always talk about my experience and my stories, is, I'm aware that young people need to have a role model. I'm aware that there's still some stereotypes around transgender people that still need to be broken down. And therefore, I think it was around about 2013, I was waiting for someone to stand up so I could say, oh, that was my role model. That was my role model. It came very clear to me that, I was waiting for no one. I was the one who had to stand up. So that's one of the reasons why I have actually stood up. It's not actually for me anymore. I've almost transitioned 30 years ago. I'm quite comfortable. I have a great job. I have a great apartment. I have a little fur monster, which is falling asleep, which is great. He's not going to bark. Excellent. But, it's not actually for me anymore. It's actually about the next generation and actually breaking down stereotypes. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here to have a chat. So, yes. So I'm going to throw it over to you guys to say, is there any questions you want to ask? This is a safe space. Don't be offended. Nothing offends me. Ask any questions.
Okay. I'm just letting our audience know Katherine's quite open to us interrupting her as she speaks as well. So feel free to ask any questions. Katherine, actually, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Now, before you went for your first interview, did you actually seek any counseling yourself?
I had a little bit of counseling. Back then, it was quite, let's say, probably not the best counselling given the time. It was quite new. I was quite lucky in the end. I went through several counsellors. Let's be very clear about it, because you have to find the right counsellor for the right person. I was quite lucky in the end because, and I will admit that I've had my gender confirmation surgery, and for that you do need to have two psychiatrists to assess you to see whether you can actually are eligible for that. And that's because of a suicide rate of people who do transition. So that is something that's put in place. I had Trudy McIntosh and Ian McDonald. Now, they were both founders of the Monash Agenda Dysphoria Clinic in Melbourne. They've both passed away. They were one of the pioneers for transgender science here in Australia and in the world. Ironically, I was one of their last patients, both of their last patients before they stopped practicing. Trudy McIntosh, I do tell the stories, and they were well into their 70s and 80s when I actually saw them. Trudy McIntosh, I had one more interview before she signed off so I could go see my surgeon. She subsequently had a heart attack and, of course, couldn't sign off on my paperwork. So I had to wait an extra 6 months before I could even go see a surgeon because of the processes that we actually had. So, I mean, she survived her heart attack, which was great. But, that was the problem back then, was actually getting access, and even today, getting access to medical professionals is actually quite difficult. 2 years ago, we had an endocrinologist, that's a hormone specialist, who was working here in Sydney. He decided to retire. And there was a big issue with the community about, well, how are we going to get our basic our hormone treatments? Who's able to do that? Because that's a very specialized field. Luckily, the medical community kind of, got onto that and was able to then change some of the rulings in regards to who can actually prescribe, hormone therapy, especially around the implant for transgender people, because otherwise there would have been an issue for hundreds and thousands, I would even say, trans people here in Sydney and even in New South Wales and sometimes in Brisbane, who used to come down and actually see that individual who decided all of one day to basically retire. Now, I only found out, I used to see him, I used to see him once a year. I only found out through a Facebook group that he retired. So, I mean, let's be very clear about it. I mean, I didn't even know he was retiring or he stopped and I had my next appointment booked up with him. Still, I've never heard from his receptionist. I mean, that's fine. But yeah, again, that was a big issue for our community. So I guess, Rawani, it is all about services, the services here. Okay, I think someone needs to go on mute, which is fun, which is cool. But again, that's something that transgender people do, is actually getting access to some basic services like healthcare. And, there isn't that many people to do it. I mean, if you kind of look even from a surgical perspective, there isn't that many people here in Australia that actually do gender confirmation surgery, whether it's either way. And so there is a waiting list for that. And that's why some people before COVID used to go overseas, because it was easier, it was quicker, and actually to do that. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So I want to be as authentic as possible in my life, but have been raised to keep professional in my career, which basically means don't talk about your love life and things like that. But it causes people to assume that I'm straight, and it makes me feel like I'm not being authentic. Yeah. So I am open in my current workspace, but I still feel a little bit awkward sometimes, because you know, whenever I'm discussing it, I'm not sure how it'll be received by others. I haven't had any bad experiences and I feel pretty happy with everything, but I'm just generally wondering like what your advice is about being authentic, but not, you know, like being too open
Out
that
there.
people think that you're, you know, like, oh, she's the gay one in the office. I don't want to be that. Like what you said about being like, I am an employee that happens to be transgender, not the transgender employee. Like I don't want to be the gay employee.
No. I totally get that. And first of all, I've always said to people is you've got to actually be safe in your environment to be out. There has been some in places that I've worked that it's just not been safe. You know, I didn't feel comfortable being out, and that is actually okay. So first of all, that is okay. If you don't feel safe about it, that's fine. Look, there is some certain tips that I used to do in regards to that, like bringing sort of thing, and it's challenge. I guess it's a challenge, and it's only you can actually work out whether you feel comfortable or not. It's actually dropping subtle things. Me and my partner, you know, you can say me and my partner have done this and all that sort of stuff. You don't have to say me and my wife, me and my husband. You can actually say partner, you know. You can actually break it down and actually not actually put a gender on your partner type thing, which is okay and all that sort of stuff. Look, the other thing that I would actually say is there has been some studies of people who aren't completely out at work aren't as productive. And the way I've actually explained it by someone, and it was actually in one of those weekend leadership, you know, executive things that, you know, everyone hates to do, but they kind of get forced to do every now and then and all that stuff. It's like sometimes, actually, every time you don't feel authentic, it's like wearing a backpack and you're putting a rock in the backpack. I hate this analogy, but it works. But it's like doing that. And what that happens is it actually impacts you doing your job because you're more worried about the weight than your actually job. So my recommendation to you is be as out and as comfortable as you can be and how you feel that you can be and all that sort of stuff. And it is a balancing act about that weight that we all have on our backs and actually trying to let it go. I know for me, I was actually told many, many years ago when I decided to, you know, re-emerge as, you know, the transgender star of, you know, of corporate. I have been called that. I hate that term, but anyway, that's fine. That, you know, don't do it. Your career will stop. Your career will stop overnight. It will stop overnight. And it's been amazing, you know, of the people who have said that to me, and they're very close. They're close personal friends of mine, and I get it. And they say it from a place of love because they don't want me to be hurt. But I can tell you that I have not in 5 years, in the last probably 11, 12 years at IBM where I have been completely out from day one type thing. It has not impacted my promotion. It has not actually impacted my actual clients. It hasn't actually impacted how I actually interact with people and all that sort of stuff. But that is my personal experience. But I also know that from IBM, it is a safe space to actually be out. And actually they kind of, you know, encourage me to go out and talk and all that sort of stuff and use the IBM brand and all that sort of stuff. But I do understand that, you know, the dichotomy of how far out do I need to be? You don't have to have a rainbow flag on your desk every day and all that sort of stuff, but it is all about being a good lawyer or a good project manager or a good whatever type thing who happens to be gay or who happens to be trans. That is the actual balance that you have to do. I do know that sometimes, you know, and I will be very clear about this with IBM, every time IBM is asked to actually speak at an LGBTI conference, every time they are asked to speak at a transgender conference, my name is always the first one, surprising enough, on the top of the list to go speak to people. I don't think that's because I'm trans. I think I'm really good at talking to people. And that's why you kind of got to change the actual conversation, because the conversation in your head is probably actually worse than the actual real conversation. So that is my advice to you. There is actually no right or wrong, but I can actually tell you, based on studies, that the more out and more open you are, the more productive you are. But again, there will be some people who see me as the transgender person from IBM. I get it. Fantastic. Not a problem. I can't change that perception, which is great. But I am also the person who works for IBM who happens to be transgender. That is the conversation in my head, and I'm okay with that. So, which is cool. Did that help you?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Not a problem. Anyone else with questions? I can talk for hours, seriously. And it's good to see smiling faces. Yes.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course, Stephanie.
Right. I come from way, way back. I was in the law long before you were out.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
It goes a long way. And so the history of women in the legal profession has been something which I've lived with all the way through. And there were only a very few before me, and they were wonderful women. And they were very helpful, but most of them.
Yeah.
Others were sort
not
of
so helpful. Yeah, I get it.
It was only, and they were friendly, but it was, if I went through it, you've got to go through it. And so we all had these things over and over. I think that's changed. The attitude's much better. But for young women lawyers these days, talking about their diversity, which was something which we weren't concerned about. We were concerned about, we were the opposite to what all the other lawyers were.
Yep.
Okay. And so we couldn't hide that.
Yes.
What you could hide was your politics. And you had to, but you didn't get away with talking about your partner if you were different, because that meant something specific in law terms.
Yes.
The partner in the firm.
Ah, yes. I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
And
yes.
that can be, so I think the vocabulary needs to be reconsidered, even though I totally agree with the points you made.
Yeah, no. I totally agree. I kind of forgot I was talking to lawyers and partners in law firms and all that stuff. Right. Yeah, which is fine. And I mean, I say that partner because basically IBM has a partner structure as well. Yes, so, and I get that type thing. But I guess the context of which I was saying is it depends on where the context is and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Yes.
You could say you're the other half or that sort of stuff. You don't have to be
Yes, you have to sort of do different things. What I'm interested in personally at the moment for someone is the questions that arise for someone who is in a relationship, gay, two men, and one of them finally recognises that he's trans. And he is transitioning now, and their relationship is still
gonna change,
but it's still close.
Yeah,
so they're very accepting of what the other one's doing, but unfortunately, the one who's transitioning and going through the hormone treatment and so on has got other disabilities, specifically under the NDIS,
right,
and cannot get access in Melbourne to psychiatrists or any help because there's just nobody available. And it's really, really hard at the moment. I agree with you absolutely about what you said.
So first of all, if they're in Melbourne, they should contact the Pride Centre. So the Victorian Pride Centre, which is awesome. They have a great wealth of directories of actually people who may actually be helping them, which is fun, which is great. So my recommendation is if they're Melbourne, best to actually get them to go to the Vic Pride Centre. I would recommend there. They've got great counsellors there. They have great, excellent services as well, so which is fun. But there is that other issue of, that you brought up, that going, there was a gay couple type thing, and one of them decides to actually transition. And this is where I kind of say to people, it's not the person who is actually transitioning that goes through a process. Their partner and family also goes through a process. Because in your scenario, this is going to be quite blow people's minds, is they were actually a gay couple, but when the person does transition, that means that they're technically a straight couple.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
The one who's staying male, suffered from early childhood, from victimisation and all sorts of things for being gay.
I know. So I think that person probably needs to have a chat with someone themselves, because they're actually going to go through their own identity crisis. Because I do know.
Absolutely. But they are also the carer under the NDIS now.
Right. Okay. Great. So my recommendation is, first of all, the Pride Centre, because they are going to go through a massive change, not only as the individual, but as a couple and all that sort of stuff. So so I would recommend that if they haven't sought counselling, that they do, and just don't do the person who is actually transitioning, but the partner as well, because they are going to go through their own transition from basically a gay person or a gay individual to basically a straight person or a gay person who's in love with someone of the gender, which that's going to blow their own head about, because it blows my head around sometimes. So, which is great. Cool.
Yes.
Excellent. Awesome.
Fascinating.
I know it is. That is fascinating. I do know a few people who have done that, i.e. couples which were lesbian or gay, and then one person's actually transitioned. And actually, the individual everyone puts the attention on is the person who's actually transitioning. They kind of forget the partner. But then when basically that's the whole thing, is it's actually the partner, the relationship's going to change, the dynamic's going to change, and actually the person, how they identify, could actually be changing as well. But if they're in Victoria, get them to go speak to the Pride Centre. I know their services are have an issue with COVID, but there is some really good services down there as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. I know there's some questions coming through the chat type thing. So
yes. Katherine, let me read out. I have a question from Alice's husband. She's asking what advice you would have for a colleague who wants to help a friend who is a transgender.
Look, it's all about having a conversation and being supportive. This is the whole thing that I say. To actually support a trans person is not that hard. To be honest with you, it's like actually supporting your best friend, your best mate, and all that sort of stuff. It's fine. If they want to transition from male to female and want to be called Mary, what's the impact to you? You've got to actually say, what is the impact to you? It's actually no impact to you, or very low impact to you, because all you just need to do is identify and be them as their new gender and actually be a friend and all that sort of stuff. And that's all a transgender person wants to have. They want to have respect. They want to be treated like a normal person. I hate to use the term normal, but, I use that in inverted commas these days, which is fine. But they just want to be treated with a level of respect and dignity as well, and all that sort of stuff. And have a conversation with with your friend saying, what support do you need from me? And that's okay to ask as well, because sometimes they just need a friend and nothing else. They're not wanting to get advice on, basically what they should do with like medical. They don't want to have your legal advice. I know, because there's lawyers here. They don't want that. They just want a friend to support them through that. They may just want a drink every now and then. They may want a hug. Just ask your friend, because their needs is going to be different from anyone else. It's like if you're going through something, I've said this, because if you're going through a medical issue type thing, You go ask your friends to be something and all that sort of stuff. Same thing, you know, whatever you're going through is what they want to go through. So yeah, just be there on all that sort of stuff. Cool. Anything else? Hi, Katherine. I'm wondering what advice you would have. I know. Oh. That was from Alice. Sorry, I'm reading the commentaries type thing. Right. Hi, I was wondering what advice you would give them. Oh, who can feel authentic at work? You know, just support them. You know, just support them at work and all that sort of stuff. And actually ask the question, and I'm always curious about this, why do people don't think they can be authentic at work? You know, what's the reason why you think? Is it because it's a male-dominated company or organization? And I get for law firms, that's probably the case and all that stuff. But to be honest with you, I work for IBM. That is the most male-dominated they call IBM, there was an acronym, men in blue suits. That's basically what IBM used to be like type thing. It's still a very male-dominated company, but I do feel like I can actually be authentic because there is benefit there, you know. As I said, there is benefit about being authentic and all that sort of stuff. So again, I'd ask the question, what's the issues and all that sort of stuff? And some of them may be real. I'm not saying that they're not real. They may be because they don't feel it. Some of it may be irrational, you know. I actually kind of thought that I would lose clients, you know, being a trans person. There could be some clients that may not actually want to deal with me because I'm trans. Well, I hate to tell you this, for 5 years in IBM, I was the person who was going in to rescue IBM's projects that were going off the rails type thing. And so for that, my gender, whether I was either male, female, or transgender, didn't even come into play type thing. It was about being who I was, you know, my career and all that sort of stuff. So again, it's coming back to being a good lawyer, being a good project manager, being good. That's what you actually need to actually do. I kind of forget the trans thing half the time because it's not relevant to the situation and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully that's helped you and all that stuff. Emma Batchelor wrote about her experiences in this book, Now That I See You. I have read that book. That is actually really, really good. That is a really, really good book. So, Merrill Lynch, I would actually recommend that book to everyone type thing. Are there any foreseeable upcoming issues and concerns related to, oh God, yes, let's start with that one. Okay, there is lots of issues. Let's start with about lots of issues, and I'm conscious of the time, so I'll probably do this as my last question. However, I am quite happy to, for you all to link with me on LinkedIn. I'm very popular. I'm very good with LinkedIn. So if you have any questions or any advice, please find me on LinkedIn. Ruwani will actually give my full details if anyone wants to. She also has my mobile number. Happy to chat with anyone, as we can say over there. Look, I think there is lots of concerns in the LGBTI space type thing. One of the biggest things that I actually get frustrated with is actually representation in our parliaments type thing. So, it's been 120 years since we've had federation, and I can tell you there has been zero representation of trans people in our federal parliament, in the New South Wales government, or even actually in city of Sydney, where I actually live. Zero. And yet there is actually, I know that basically there is actually people wanting to stand type thing for parliament. And watch this space. I probably will stand. I probably will be standing for the Liberal Party. That's probably going to upset a whole lot of people here, but that's okay. Not a problem. And it actually upsets a lot of people when I say Liberal Party LGBTI. Got it. I understand that, but I don't vote on social issues. I vote on actually other issues. So hence the reason why Liberal Party is where I align to. But this is one of the things that I actually do. I'm actually quite vocal about is basically there's actually lack of representation. It is just not acceptable that 120 years since Federation, we do not have an out trans person representing in our federal, state, and actually local governments and all that sort of stuff. One of the reasons why I say that is there is actually laws that are actually being championed at the moment, and I'm not going to mention Mark Latham, don't start me on that one, which basically, you know, this is a person, you know, like him, love him, hate him, whatever you want to do with him type thing. He should not, as a person who doesn't understand trans issues, be the one actually putting a bill against up around transgender issues. He does not understand. He does not have a lived experience, yet he is championing an actual bill, which I think is actually the issue here type thing. The content of his bill, I'm not even going to go into that because that's a different, we could talk for hours in regards to that, and happy to debate with anyone about that. But this is where I'm saying it's all about actual representation. Representation is the most biggest thing. This is one of the reasons why I actually stand up all the time. It is all about being counted. It is all about actually basically showing a profile. It is all about changing the conversation about basically what is a transgender person. I will tell you, most people, when they say transgender, they think Mardi Gras, they actually think sex workers, they actually think anyone who's basically in that sort of demographic. 9 times out of 10, when you say there is a person who is transgender, who's a senior managing consultant for IBM, most people don't actually think that's actually possible. Yet this is the reason why I stand up. I think corporate Australia is going great. They're definitely changing. Lots of things need to actually change. But my biggest thing for me personally is actually representation actually in our parliaments, because that actually would have a bigger impact than anything here in Australia type thing. To see an actual transgender person on actually speaking in our parliaments would break down so many stereotypes, and actually which would be amazing to see. So, yeah. Awesome. Rawani, do I have a time check? Do I have one time for one question?
We've just got let's allow the last question.
Well, our last question. Okay,
yes.
What can employers do better to support their LGBTI staff better? Okay, here's some tips type thing. I want all of you to go back to your offices when we're allowed back into our offices and actually say that you went to a great talk about LGBT with an LGBT activist. Why? That will actually tell anyone who is not out that 1, you're an ally, 2, you support, that you're actually supporting the community, and 3, that you've actually spent the time to actually listen to an activist. No, that's the stuff. That actually is awesome for an LGBTI person type thing, because most people don't realize who their supporters are in the office, especially if you're in a big firm. By having those conversations actually allows people to know that you are 1, a supporter, 2, you're an ally, 3, you're potentially a champion. And that's what we people actually want to hear. I think what employers can also do is also celebrate, you know, LGBTI. There is many days in the calendar. There is Pride Month in June, which is always good. There is Wear It Purple, which we've just had as part of August. That is some things which is awesome. They're great fundraisers, and it actually shows people that you actually are in actually doing support. It's the little things that you're surprising means a lot. So hopefully that, I know I've hit time. As I said, I can talk for hours. Happy to talk to hours for anyone.
Katherine, thank you so much. I think we do need to wrap up the session, and I think I would be speaking on behalf of everyone to say that there are so many other questions we would like to ask you, and I think we've just touched maybe on the tip of issues. And what I would really like to say thank you to is to thank you is that you've created awareness here, okay? And that is exactly what we want to do, and also to promote understanding. So as an appreciation, Women Lawyers Association has sent you an Maya e-card, gift card.
Thank you.
To say thank you so much for your help.
Thank you.
And I would also like to thank the Law Society for their support in our Diversity and Equality Committee, and also to thank our president, Renee Bianchi, of the Women Lawyers Association, for her leadership in allowing us to organize these events. And I would also like to say thank you to my committee members. We are only a small group, about 5 of us, and each of us are extremely interested in championing rights of the groups that we represent. And I would also like to encourage everyone to look up Katherine on LinkedIn, and also please feel free to contact our association with any other questions or issues you'd like us to address. And finally, thank you to our audience for attending this session. Also, I would like to say today is the 23rd of September is actually International Bisexuality Day. So I hope this will be a good remembrance for everyone, and that we have actually taken the first step to celebrating LGBTIQ issues. Thank you so much. Thank you, Katherine.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.